And say, alright, love is kinda crazy with a spooky little girl like you. You always keep me guessing, I never seem to know what you are thinking. And if some fella looked at you, it's for sure your little eye will be a winking. I get confused cause I don't know where I stand. And then you smile and hold my hand. Love is kinda crazy with a spooky little girl like you. Spooky, spooky, yeah.
From the Coast to Coast AM archives, you're listening to the best of Art Bell. This program was originally broadcast October 30th, 1993. Art will be live tomorrow night for his annual Ghost to Ghost AM show.
If you have a story for us, come on ahead. We've only got one more hour of it, and this is it. Wild Card Line 3, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. I kind of like to share a story, well, 3 stories if I have the time.
All right. Where are you? Where are you, please?
I'm in Little Lake, California.
Little Lake, California. All right, go ahead.
The first time that I ever had some sort of strange experience, I was lying in my bed with my eyes closed, and I could see these faces floating through my room. And they were a lot like the faces out of the death pits of the concentration camps. They were hollow-eyed and gaping mouths. And at first I was kind of mystified by it, and it seemed like minutes, but I'm sure it was only seconds. And I thought to myself, well, if you're here for good, you can stay. If not, if you're here for no goodness, go now. And immediately the faces disappeared. The other story, my husband was in the Pacific, and he was fighting the Japanese. And there was a young Marine that came back across the no man's land, and the Japanese were shooting everything they had, and when he got to the other to their lines, he was riddled with bullet holes from his waist down. His legs were, all his bones in his legs were shattered. And whenever the chaplain asked how he got there, he only replied, "My father brought me back. My father brought me back." And whenever it come to find out, I think the Yank magazine wrote it up in the fact that the chaplain found out that the father had died in the Battle of Aragon or some other battle. The third one was a couple years ago here at my home. We had these footsteps constantly, maybe 2 or 3 times a month out across the patio and wooden deck. And my husband was out in the workshop working one day, and each time we'd hear these footsteps, we'd check them out. There would be nothing there. And this particular night, he was working out in the workshop, and he thought I'd called him, and I said no. And he went on back to what he was doing, and suddenly a hammer flew across the workshop and just missed him by fractions, and there wasn't a soul nowhere.
Wow.
And we have no idea how the hammer or who threw the hammer, but it went across the shop nevertheless.
Unmistakable message, nevertheless.
Nevertheless.
Thank you very much for your call.
Mm-hmm.
and adding to our list of incredible stories this morning. Some of these have been truly incredible, and I'm going to have to sit down and listen to a tape of this program myself. We'll be right back. Good morning. First-time caller line. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Hi. Where are you, ma'am?
Spokane, Washington.
Spokane.
This is back in the 50s. Oh, gosh, wait till I turn this darn heater down. I'll be right back.
Oh, that's quite all right. Go ahead. We have no open lines right now. When we do, you know the numbers. Pick one and call it.
Hold up here.
Yes.
Back in the 50s, my husband and I had, he was a hard rock miner up here in Washington State, and I had gone down to California, and I tried to talk him into coming down there and get a job in the shipyard, which he used to work in, and got that all arranged. And I had a little, just a one little apartment, and I went and got had a lease option to buy on a place, and I transferred my mail over to a little mailing thing. Well, he called me up and said he would be down in a couple of days. Mm-hmm. So I was busy from one place to the other and so forth. I'm driving down Vermont Avenue, and I look in the rearview mirror, and there he is in a black sedan with another guy driving, and he smiled and waved at me. And I thought, oh, that son of a gun, he got here 2 days early. I drove on home and got everything ready, made a pot of coffee and everything. He didn't show up, and I had to go over to the other house. I left a note on the door, went over, took care of the apartment that I was going to rent with option to buy, and so forth. It was a duplex.
Right.
It paid for itself and everything because the beauty operator was in the other half, and I was real proud of that. Went back home, didn't hear anything. About 4 days later, I got a letter in this little mail office. The girl called me and said, "You've got a letter from up home," and I went over, picked it up, and he had written to me. And a couple of days later, I got a telegram that he had been killed the day after I saw him in the car.
Oh, gee.
I have never remarried. It was such a blow. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, he was killed. He had sold the house. He had sold our furniture. He had packed up things to ship and everything. And he was killed the day before he was supposed to work one shift and leave, and the next morning, and he was killed.
And so as a result, you have never remarried?
No, it was too much.
I understand, and I really appreciate your taking the trouble to call us.
Thank you.
Take care. Line 3, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Hello.
Are you there?
I'm here.
I just wanted to say I had an incident happen about 4 years ago. I went to my mother's house, and my mother has her grandmother, at the time was her mother, was living with her, and she was approximately about 90 years old, and pretty well bedridden. I mean, she couldn't get out past the kitchen.
Sure.
And we went to dinner. I just happened to stop by and see her, and she said, "Let's go to dinner." And I said, "Fine." So before we left, she always keeps the windows locked. We always lock the doors. I mean, that was just one of her pet peeves. And we went to dinner. It was about 20 minutes away from where we were at. And we were at dinner, we were talking, and I never really got to know much about my grandmother. And I had said something about, well, what was my grandfather like? And we talked, and she said he was real mean and vindictive to your grandmother, and that was one of the main reasons why they divorced. And he died. He was an alcoholic, and he passed away so many years before this. So, I mean, we went into other conversations, and at the end of the evening, we went back to the house. We came out, went to the back door, and in my mom's bathroom, which is at the other end of the house, there would have been no way my grandmother could have got, because she had a wheelchair to the kitchen. That was as far as she could go, because she was in a trailer house.
Right.
And we got to the back bathroom, and I happened to go in first. And I walked in, and I was just about to shut the door, and just something told me, don't shut the door all the way. I looked up, and on the inside of the door, she had one of those length-away mirrors of the door length.
Oh, yes.
It had been lifted up past the doorway, and then it was like about 2 feet above the doorway, and it had been tightened all, and it had it probably had about 12 or 13 of those latches you screw in and tighten. Right. Every one of the latches was completely tight, because I just completely went over this thing. There was no forced entry. There was nobody had a key. The only people that have a key to that house is my mom and my dad, and he lived up in Ely. And this chill just ran down my back, because if anybody was to break into the house, I mean, there's been just no godly reason why they would just raise this mirror up and tighten it down like they did. And I told her to come in. I says, "Were you messing with the mirror earlier this afternoon?" She said, "No, I've never messed with the mirror." And she looked in, and her face just turned white. And, I mean, it was just really weird. And we went in to check on my grandma to make sure she was all right. And she was in the other room. She was just muttering my grandfather's name, just kept muttering. I mean, she never really ever talks about him. And she just kept muttering. I mean, she didn't say, but just kept saying his name over and over and over again. And, I mean, after that, I mean, I've heard stories and stuff, and I used to be skeptic about it, but never again. I mean, to this day, when we took the mirror off the next day, I mean, she didn't even want the mirror in the house. I took it to the dump and got rid of it. But, I mean, that is probably one of the weirdest things I've ever had happen to me, or to her for that matter.
Well, you've told that story on the right morning, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. And I know that a lot of you sitting out there listening to all this morning have got to be going through some changes, because I sure am. These aren't nuts. These people are literate, obviously well-educated, articulate, young, old, middle-aged. That last caller was just another example. How can you ignore it? Good morning. On our first-time caller line, you're on the air.
Hello, Art.
Hi.
Hi, this is John calling from Fairbanks, Alaska.
Hi, John, all the way from Fairbanks.
Yes, I want to know if perhaps you're having some poltergeist in your radio feeds tonight.
I hope not. Why do you ask?
I don't know if any other callers have picked this up. I don't know if it's in one of your network feeds or what, but periodically, starting with your first hour through your second, third hour, every so often, I'd hear a background noise. It sounded like a duck quacking. I mean,
come on.
Now I'm recording your program, and there are quacking ducks. There's poltergeist or something on your program. I'm sure other listeners.
Do you have the tape there?
I have the tape going right now.
Look. Oh, well, you have it going now to record your own call.
Exactly. I turned everything way down, but hopefully I can still record it. But periodically.
All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to terminate this conversation with you now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want you to do is cue your recorder to where you've got that on tape.
Okay.
And call me back and play it.
Okay.
Will you do that?
Tonight?
Tonight.
Okay, I'll try, because it's been probably an hour since I've heard it, but I'll try to get it for you.
If you can do it, call me back on the same line.
Okay.
All right?
I'll try to do that, because I wanted to share a couple stories with you.
Well, if you want to do... All right, fine. Go ahead and share. You've got time to share one now. Go ahead.
I'll try to do that, but when I went to school, I went to school with this boy, and he had a pretty rough life. He lost one brother in the 8th grade due to some childhood illness, and then a brother that was a couple years older than him went to Vietnam. And he was killed when he was a gunner on board a helicopter, and he was killed in action in Vietnam. And he led a fairly unhappy life, and we parted ways, and I joined the Air Force, and I ended up in Alaska, and I was stationed at Eielson Air Force Base, and one night he came to me in a dream, and he was very sad in the dream, and he was crying. And he expressed to me in the dream that he'd been hurt badly, and he just had a car wreck. And I just thought it was a dream. And a few days later, I received a letter from my mom and a newspaper clipping that he'd been killed in a car wreck.
Oh, boy. All right.
And it was more than a coincidence.
I understand. All right. Look, let's hold it here. Call me back with that tape. Line 3, you're on the air.
Yeah, actually, I have a ghost story that I'm still trying to resolve now. I'm trying to find out who the ghost is. However, it's kind of a mundane ghost story.
You mean this is going on now?
Yeah, at where I work.
All right.
But it's real mundane. He just walks through the place and doesn't bother anyone. But when I lived in Santa Barbara, my father was a pastor of a church. And he was a part-time pastor in a church, a small church, couldn't afford to pay him. Part of his compensation was we lived in some apartments in the second story of the church.
Mm-hmm.
This building was built at the late 19th century. So when we were living there, maybe had 90 years on it.
Sure.
Very old, very oppressive building. Everyone I know who lived there was terrified, I mean literally terrified, to go downstairs when it was dark. And, you know, it was my job, for instance, to go turn on the lights in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday morning I had to go turn. My dad, many years later, said, well, I didn't want your sisters doing that. You know, why do I have to?
Well, right. Lucky you.
Yeah, well, I swear that we would go down in the dark and there was something there. There was something there. I knew it. I found out I'm not the only one who felt that way. There were some people we knew who lived there after we did. Everyone in that family refused to go downstairs when it was dark. Anytime somebody went down there, they knew something was there. Well, we later found out someone had committed suicide in that church.
Yeah, there you go.
Many years earlier, someone committed suicide in that church. One of the people who lived there, he was a member of the church, he lived there the same time we did. Mm-hmm. Very nice guy. It turned out, this happened just a few years ago, this man murdered he just flipped out and he murdered his mother and his father. And he'd lived in that church for years. I don't know if it's connected, but he had flipped out, he murdered his mother and his father.
It absolutely wouldn't surprise me.
It made the news here in town. And this happened a couple years ago in Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm. He knifed his mother and father. The church was sold. A military prep school bought it and had a bunch of cadets living there and going to school there.
Right.
Some of those cadets got it in their mind to go down and kill a homeless person. The military academy got closed down because their cadets had committed murder. I went back a couple years ago, and with a friend who also used to live there, we went to the place because she still lives in Santa Barbara. She goes, well, it's a coffee house now.
Now, that's not just something you get on your mind.
Yeah, exactly. And we went to the coffee house, and now the coffee house was an occult theme. And you go in, and what I felt when I went in there by myself, and just in all the paintings on the wall, all the decorations was there. We talked to a man whose studio was upstairs in what used to be our apartments.
Yes.
He said he would not stay there at night. At night, when it got dark, he went home.
Whatever it was.
That building was not a pleasant place.
I've got you, sir. Thank you very much for the call. I've sure got you. I'll tell you, that really does seem to go on. It does seem to stay within buildings, structures, where things have occurred. Though on other occasions, spirits, ghosts, if you want, have followed people. Not let them go. When they're part of it, they seem to get followed. Line 1, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Art. I got a strange story. I used to live in Taiwan.
Oh, yes.
And a friend and I had were moving into an apartment. And the apartment had one bedroom, and there was two of us. So we had them put in a wood partition in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And one night we had come home kind of late, and we had getting ready to go to sleep. And he was in his bed, I was in my bed, and we heard these noises, these strange noises, like somebody was throwing BBs on a like a refrigerator, you know, a metallic sound.
Sure.
And
I can imagine BBs on a fridge.
Anyway, I said, you know, cut it out, and he kept telling me to cut it out. You know, we were blaming each other.
Right.
So I didn't think anything of it, and all of a sudden I kind of see my friend, and he's sneaking around this wood partition. You know, the lights are out.
Yes.
And I'm trying not to laugh because, you know, I'm kind of hiding under the covers, and I see him coming around here, and I'm saying, well, as soon as he gets to the bed, I'm going to really scare this guy because he doesn't even know I'm looking at him. And so he gets to the bed, and I throw up the covers, and I, you know, scream at him, and I hear my friend in his bed say, you know, Tony, cut it out. And I tell you, I just broke out into like a cold sweat, and I laid back on the bed, and the bed started to, like it was on the ocean, it just started to move.
Float. Yeah.
And, you know, I told him, I says, hey, turn on the lights, you know, and he heard the way I was saying it, and he turned on the lights, and I had him check the front door and the windows, and there was nobody there. And needless to say, you know, I had like friends stay over like the next week or so. I sleep in there.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And you say the bed moved like ocean waves.
Like I was on the ocean. Just the whole bed was just like floating.
Yeah, that bothers me. Thank you very much for the call, sir. That sort of thing bothers me. That and in movies when you see doors that sort of bend inwards. They don't break, they bend. God, it's totally freaky. We'll be back.
To a special replay of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. This program originally aired October 30th, 1993. Please do not call.
Some of the stories this morning, boy, I'm telling you. Really, you have all done very well this morning, and there's still a bit more to come, so here we go. Line 2, you're on the air.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fine.
Well, my story is, my son used to come in. He was 19 years old, and he used to pick roses all the time for me.
Right.
So one day he said that he was going to go out of state, and I didn't agree. He says, let me go. He says, I have a premonition that I don't have a long lifespan. I says, don't be silly. If it's anybody that's going to go first, it'll be me. He says, well, he says, promise me if anything happens to me, he says, you'll send me roses. I says, oh, yeah, and send me lilacs.
Right.
So a year later, he got in a car accident, and he passed away Christmas. We lived in an old farmhouse, over 100 years old. The doorbell was not connected, and the doors were jammed. The one door is never open. 2 days after he died, the doorbell rang, and the doors flew open, and you could smell roses.
Oh.
You'd come back to say goodbye.
Oh. And you smelled roses.
Yeah, the smell of roses. And we were just...
How did you react emotionally when that happened?
I had a very good feeling because he came back to say goodbye to me. And I knew that there was something. Because he was only 20 years old when he passed away.
There is something, ma'am.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the story. A lot of stories like that, variations of it. People who have left didn't get finished with their business before they had to go. Good morning. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air.
Art, this is John calling you back from Fairbanks.
Hi, John. Oh, yes, John.
I've edited the tapes. Now, I'm going to try to let you hear this duck quacking, and this was just a few minutes ago when you were talking to the young gentleman just before you took your station break.
Yes.
Now, if this doesn't come across from this portable tape player, I will make copies and send them to you and let you pick it up yourself.
All right, let's hear it.
Here goes. This is just from about 10 minutes ago. We'll see how this comes across the network. Here it goes.
Oh, I said, hey, turn on the lights, and he heard the way I was saying it, and he turned on the lights, and I had him check the front door and the windows, and there was nobody there. And needless to say, I had like friends stay over like the next week or so.
I absolutely heard it.
Hear that?
I heard it.
That's been on your program all evening long, sporadically, that duck quacking noise.
Well, I wonder if people at other affiliates have heard that.
I figured some other caller would identify it to you because I've heard it from the beginning of your show.
All right, it was clearly there. Either we have a board operator in Fairbanks who has a sense of humor, or from a source that no doubt you suspect.
It'd be interesting to know, but I've been hearing it from your hour one on through.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the call back, and I heard it quite clearly. That was in Fairbanks. Well, what about some of you at other affiliates? Did you hear any such thing? I assure you I did nothing like that here. Nothing. Line 2, you're on the air.
Good morning, Art.
Oh, good morning.
Yes, I wanted to say when I was a teenager, I was sleeping away, and in this dream, I was holding up my casket. So I was screaming, and my mother come running in, and she said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I'm holding up a casket." And she said, "Who's in it?" And I said, "Your brother." So in 2 days, she got the call he had died.
Oh, how did she, when you told her that in the first place?
I'd seen his face in the casket.
How did she react to that when you told her?
She was more or less a psychic herself, and she believed it, and he had a sunstroke. And then another time, my dad we lived on the farm, and he had to go to another city in the same state, not far away. And his sister wasn't expected to live. So we didn't have a phone, so a friend had come over and told him that his sister was sick. So he went, and sure enough, about 4 days later, in the middle of the night, the clock was, we had a clock that struck the hour.
Sure.
And sure enough, the clock usually went bong, bong. This time it went bong, bong. So my mother said, "Hey, she just died." And she did.
Well, your mother had the power then.
Yes, the clock really told us that she had died.
Thank you. Have a good morning. Coincidence? Maybe. All of these stories coincidence? Not likely. What do you conclude? Wildcard line 3, you're on the air.
Oh, this is a true story. This is Patrick Fitzpatrick from Silver Springs, Nevada. This is a true story about an Irish and a British ghost, and about whom a poem was written by William Butler Yeats called "The Ghost of Roger Casement." In it, Casement was executed by the British, and the Irish government, since they became independent, wanted his body. Every year they'd ask for his body, and finally they got the body back 30 years later when a Labour government came to power. But one of Casement's last wishes was, "Do not let my body rest in this place," which is England.
Yes.
So Butler wrote the poem. He said, "I can't sleep at night. I hear a knocking on my door. I just cannot sleep." And finally, at the end of it, he says, it's the ghost of Roger Casement knocking on my door. And then the British guy, and of course that poem, it was published by Yeats just when Ireland was about to go in on the British side in the Second World War, and because the British government had refused to give the body back, the Irish government stayed neutral.
That's quite a story.
Yeah, William Butler Yeats, the ghost of Roger Casement.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye.
Have a good morning, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Line 3, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to relate a story that goes back to 1968. I was drafted, sent to Nam because of the tremendous turnover of people and whatnot. Well, I was in the infantry. We were stationed in a small fire base close to the Cambodian border.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an evening where it was our turn to go out and set up an ambush. We set it all up. We had everything laid out so that if Charlie came walking along, we could do our thing.
Sure.
And one guy was awake. The rest of us were asleep. That gentleman woke us all up. There was 6 of us, and we all saw a small party of Vietnamese coming at us. They were armed and whatnot, and at the appropriate time, we sprung the ambush and whatnot, and nothing happened. I mean, they just kept right on walking through it, not even looking at us. Like,
incredible.
It was the most crazy thing that happened over there while I was there.
Imagine everybody check their ammunition.
Well, you know, when you let go of the claymore, you know something goes.
Absolutely.
And it was the most, I mean, the country itself is a spiritual country, but then to have that happen, and I've never seen...
You know, I don't know.
Any of the other gentlemen
I don't know if it's that,
with us.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that surprising, sir. People who die violent deaths tend to linger, and there are a lot of violent deaths in war.
I've never experienced anything like it, and I doubt if I ever will. But it was, and I've never told anybody about it.
Big effect on your life?
Well, without a doubt. Without a doubt, the whole thing was a big effect on my life.
Well, I'm honored that you chose this moment to tell the story.
It was a good time. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Letting me say it.
Thank you. Have a good morning. Do you believe him? Did he sound crazy to you, affected? Oh, I suppose you might say that with the strain of war, combat, things like that might happen. Might be a mass hallucination. Or more likely, not. Good morning. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air.
Hello, I'm calling from Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa, welcome to the program.
This takes place on the Navajo Reservation, near the trailhead of Rainbow Bridge, and in the vicinity of Navajo Mountain. My father and I were camping in about 1976, and we were camping in the ruins of the old Rainbow Lodge. It had burned down some, I don't know how many years ago.
Yes.
And as we were going to sleep after we'd put the campfire out, we both felt a presence of some sort. Didn't see anything. It was something we both felt. The most notable thing is that my father's a preacher, a Free Methodist preacher, and he also has a master's degree in archaeology, or anthropology, I should say. And he felt it too. I know he did, because he said he wanted to offer a prayer, and he prayed something about having a shepherd, watch the sheep.
Sure.
And well, it I guess eventually disappeared because we both went to sleep and didn't really talk much about it after that. And that was that's the only thing I've ever happened close to that, close to anything ghostly.
But it was enough that you knew that it was something.
It was there. There was a definite apprehension, a feeling of apprehension in the air. And I'm sure that people who have lived out on the reservation or visited or been in the sacred parts, which is, I guess, Navajo Mountain. It's part of the sacred area. Have stories like this, and I'd be interested to hear from them, too.
Maybe you will. Thank you for the call.
Gotcha.
Right. The presence, felt, distinctly felt. Have you ever felt that? No question about it. Something's there. Or no question about it. Something cold and not particularly welcome is in your area. It's not a trivial emotion. It's overwhelming. It comes in waves. Have you ever felt it? Line 1, you're on the air.
Good morning, Art. The fellow from Fairbanks is exactly right. I've been jiggling my radio, wondering what's wrong with it tonight. Usually.
Where are you?
Anchorage, KANI. You come in usually as clear as a bell. Tonight it's been glitches and pops and strange.
Really?
Strange. I have a story about witchcraft in the Arctic and immortality.
All right.
1961, I was visiting an old Eskimo friend in Teller, which is up on the Seward Peninsula, hop, skip, and a jump across from Siberia.
Yes, sir.
Near the Arctic Circle, a beautiful day, and this old man, William McQuillock, tribe historian for that Mary's Igloo tribe, quite a famous Eskimo and a young man. Well, he took a skiff, went about 30 miles out of Teller to snipe for gold up a little creek at an abandoned gold mine. I was walking along the creek, and I saw something I couldn't believe. A track of a human footprint, left foot, barefoot, in the sand. The creek had just dropped, and this was very, very fresh, and I couldn't believe it. My foot was exactly 12 inches long. This was 4 inches longer than mine. One human footprint in a place where you had to walk carefully or you'd touch your rubber boots on the sharp rocks, a lot of quartz there. I called William and his cousin over. What is this? He took one look, turned, and started walking away, both of them. About a mile back down to the skiff, and I couldn't figure out what's wrong with him. He acted afraid. I went down, and after a lot of persuasion, he told me a story of the most famous shaman. At the turn of the century, there was a huge Eskimo, nearly 7 feet tall, he said, a huge man, who traveled amongst the villages. Strangely, he'd show up 150 miles away in one day. He preached to the people. He healed the sick. He even raised the dead, William told me. A young boy had died, and he put a tent over the grave, crawled in, a big noise, a roaring sound, and he walked out with the boy. This is a famous shaman. Turn of the century, the Great Nome Gold Rush. The Army came to try to keep order. They had a law that no witchcraft could be practiced. Well, this huge shaman showed up outside of Nome, and a troop of soldiers went out with a captain to arrest him because he was preaching revolt and warning the people, the Eskimo, against the coming white man. He said, "You cannot do anything to me. I have powers greater than you." And he had a man take a spear and stabbed him to prove it. Spit on his hands, rubbed his side, and there was no scar. And the captain almost went nuts, but he arrested him. They put him on a boat to take the shaman to Seattle for trial, and a storm immediately came up and was about to sink the boat. And they looked, and the shaman, instead of being in the brig, was sitting on the stern looking back at the land. So they put him back in the brig. A few minutes later, he was back on the deck. The captain went berserk, and the sailors turned the boat around and put the shaman back ashore near Nome. And
I'm sure.
Told me, now you know about the track. He is still here. 61.
Oh, that's a great story. Those are great stories. Thank you for the call.
Good evening.
You take care. Now, sailors, sailors particularly, wouldn't sail under those conditions. And you know that goes for sailors today too. It hasn't changed. You don't venture out to sea with that sort of thing around you. You don't do it. You just don't do it today or then. Good morning. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air.
Hi, this is Mark again from KNZR in Bakersfield.
Hi, Mark.
I just wanted to say real quick, we haven't heard any quacking ducks, but we've had a similar experience before about a month ago during your show.
What did you hear?
And some ladies had called up during business hours and said they kept hearing someone saying they were going to kill them way in the background.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe somebody along the line is
Well, you never know, of course, Mark, as you well know, you would have the power there to make something...
Yeah, they thought one of us was doing it or something.
I see. Well, I appreciate the information. I find it a little unsettling, though.
Yeah, okay, just want to let you know.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. That's a board operator there in Bakersfield. Well, that unsettles me a little. Line 2, you're on the air.
How you doing, Art?
Okay.
I got a story about my uncle who died about 3 years ago. He died about 2 o'clock in the morning. So we all go to the hospital and, you know, condole my aunt. And then it was, you know, getting pretty early in the morning, so we all went home for a few hours. And then we came back. And as we all come back in the morning to her house, there's this dog that has just parked itself outside the front of the house. And every time somebody got out of the car who was part of the immediate family, the dog came up to them, sat there until you petted it, and then walked away. And as soon as the whole immediate family who was there, you know, came to the house, the dog went away, and we never saw the dog again.
What do you have any idea what dog this was, or?
It looked like a little terrier or something.
Well, not what kind, but whose or why it did what it did. Any idea?
I don't know, but it was just a little tiny dog that was so full of life, and I mean, my uncle was the same way. Here was a guy who was just so full of life, and it was just strange. It waited to greet everyone that came to the house, and after everyone got there, the dog was gone. We never saw it again.
Well, that's really something.
Really weird story. I don't know what it was, but it's weird.
I thank you for the call.
You're welcome.
You take care. Good morning. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air. Hello there.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're on the air. Turn your radio off, please.
Oh.
Turn it off, all the way off.
It's off.
Very good. Welcome to the program. Where are you?
Fairbanks, Alaska.
Fairbanks. Yes, sir.
And quack, quack.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to go back to this story from this guy from Alaska, that Anchorage. And you don't want to believe anything that anybody from Anchorage tells you because they're full of bull.
Well, now, is that
Say about the shaman, that is really ridiculous.
Well, now, was that a kind thing to say about a sister city?
Sister city? Oh, they think they own Alaska, for God's sakes. I've lived here all my life, 65 years in Fairbanks, and I don't like Anchorage. Okay, you got her.
Yeah, you know, thank you very much for the call, sir. Never let them know who you are. I guess I'd better take a second out and do as I always try to do and say thank you for wonderful talk radio, another truly wonderful week of talk radio.